grew up in Scotland. I grew up in a Christian family. My father was a local pastor, but he had a lot of unhealed wounds from his own past, which manifested in addictions and anger. So growing up in that environment, I didn't get a very good understanding of who God was. My dad, I was always scared around him, so I never felt safe. And whenever I was around him, I would always try and be on my best behaviour, because I was scared if I did something wrong, then he would get angry. By the time I was about 11 years old, my father had to give up being a pastor. He was obviously unable to keep going on with that. So my mum and dad, they separated. This was when I was 11. And I didn't see my dad very often after that. And truth be told, as much as I loved my dad, and I really did, things were better without him. And I was actually relieved that he wasn't around because I just felt safer. So a year later, my father was meant to be coming to visit us, but he never turned up. And I remember being really angry with him and thinking, why doesn't he care? Why has he not come to see us? But later we found out that he'd actually died. And I felt so guilty when I found that out. I just thought, I'm such a terrible person because I was happy that he wasn't there, but now he's actually gone. And I started just to think really bad thoughts about myself. I started to think that I was worthless. I started to think that I was a terrible person, that I was never going to amount to much. And I felt that I had to try and fix myself. So I started working really hard at school. I thought if I did well, then I would be able to prove to everyone that I was worth something. I started to diet. I thought that if I looked the way I thought I should, then I would be special, that people would look at me and think that I was something. But things spiraled and I ended up developing an eating disorder. I started drinking and I started taking drugs. And every time I thought that when I sobered up, things would be better, but they weren't. And it just kept getting worse and worse, until I really got to the point where I knew that I desperately needed help. Thankfully, I had an amazing mother who was praying for me all the time, and she really knew God, and she really fought for me. But unfortunately, my mother suffered a stroke in that time. I remember thinking at that time when she had the stroke, I remember thinking, God, if you allow my mother to die, then I'm really giving up on you. I've had enough. I'm done, because you don't seem to be helping me. I just wanted him to fix things for me, and he didn't seem to be doing that for me. So my mum did die, and it was the worst thing I've ever experienced, because she was my strength. She was everything that kept me going, and I didn't know what to do in that time. Everything was so dark. And the truth is, the only thing, as much as I wanted to give up on God, the only thing that kept me going was God, because I'd given my life to him as a child, and he never let go of me, even though I let go of him. And he led me to a place. It's a ministry called Mercy Ministries, and it's a home for girls. And I went there, and I'd really reached the end of myself. I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And they demonstrated God's love to me every single day. They would show me that God loves me, but they also taught me how to live. They taught me from the Bible, and I learned that all the thoughts that were going on in my mind, the thoughts that I wasn't good enough, that I was ugly, that I would never be anything, they were lies. And they taught me to take those thoughts captive, to renew my mind. And every day I would take the lies and I would throw them out, and I would replace them with God's truth. And that's when things began to change in my life. I was there for 6 months, and after 6 months I left. And when I walked into that place, my head was down. I felt worthless. And when I left, I held my head high, knowing that God loved me, and knowing that I could face things that came my way, because he had given me the tools, he'd given me truth from his word to help me live my life. Since then, I have come to South Africa. I came here in 2009. God put a real desire in me to write. And I came here to write people's stories. And when I sit with people and I hear their stories, and they may come from completely different backgrounds and completely different cultures from me, I realize that we all have the same pains, we all suffer. And because I've experienced pain, but God has brought me through it and He's given me hope, I realize I can draw on the pain that I've gone through, and I can find the words to give voice to the stories of other people. And I've realized that nothing is wasted when you give it to God. When you're willing to let Him into your life and let Him help you deal with the pain in your life and the hurts that you've gone through, He'll take it and make it beautiful.